What makes a good leader? Can leadership be learned? And what are the consequences when leadership fails? Just some of the questions raised by my colleague Steve Adubato in his latest book, Lessons in Leadership, which, among other things, spotlights a wide gamut of leaders, from Pope Francis to Governor Chris Christie, and provides concrete tools and tips for any aspiring leader. And joining me now to talk about his new book and the critical importance of good leadership, particularly in politically interesting times like ours, is the anchor of many programs here on WNET and NJTV, MetroFocus contributor, Steve Adubato. Steve, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, Raf.
Now, why did you decide to tackle the subject of leadership in this book?
Leadership is the issue, the challenge. It is the question of the day. New president. People are looking for leadership. People are crying out for leadership. People are asking, where is the leadership? We want to teach our kids good leadership. We want to have them be good leaders. But the question becomes, what is it? And I don't mean in the abstract. What are the keys? What are the essential elements to great leadership? And so what I've done, and you've talked to me about this for years, because we've also, in our work together, I've had great people come on. I've asked them, what's the number one key to being a great leader? And I've asked those folks. I've asked folks offline as well for the past 2 or 3 years. And I've come to the conclusion that there are some really key essential traits to being a great leader.
Talk about some of those people that you talked to.
How about this? Eric Legrand, who was the great football player from Rutgers, who was paralyzed in 2010, who you would think was like upset and totally negative about his life in the past 6 or 7 years or so. Eric Legrand had the most positive attitude of anyone I've ever seen. Tavis Smiley from MetroFocus and for One-on-One asked him about the essence of great leadership. All these people, every walk of life, sports, broadcasting, media, corporate world, what is the essence of great leadership and also the greatest leadership challenge you faced? And those are the answers that I've taken and all together with my work, teaching over a lot of years and doing coaching on leadership, and I've come up with the keys to being a great leader.
Now, throughout this political year, throughout this political election,
crazy.
Many Americans have been pining, have been wanting to look back at really inspiring leadership from past presidents. You're right about some of the presidents and their leadership, Lincoln, JFK, and you write about President Obama. Talk about their leadership abilities, the pluses and the minuses.
I'll tell you what, the reason I wrote about JFK is because I was fascinated by his ability to acknowledge his own mistakes. So people talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, issue you know well as a student of history, someone who knows Cuba better than most. So interesting. People talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis, but they don't understand the Bay of Pigs. And the Bay of Pigs, without going into a lot of history, you know how screwed up it was. You know the mistakes that JFK made.
I was there.
How about you were there? But how about this? That Jack Kennedy, to his credit, came out after the fiasco that the Bay of Pigs was, and he said, I screwed up. I listened to the generals, didn't ask enough questions. It was my fault. And it was only because of that and what he learned that he was better in the Cuban Missile Crisis. When was the last time you saw a national leader or a corporate leader saying, I screwed up, I learned from it, it was my mistake, I own it, as opposed to trying to put it on somebody else at a lower level? I really respected Jack Kennedy for that. And also Lincoln. The reason I wrote about Lincoln is because our country's so divided today. And I think to myself, Lincoln, after the Civil War, what it took to be the kind of leader to unite the country. The leader who brought people in who were against him, the rivals who he brought together. What kind of courage did it have and confidence to bring people who hated him into his administration, but he needed them to bring people together? That's a leader.
You know, as I said in the introduction, you're right about Chris Christie, somebody we've known for many years.
We both of us have interviewed him many times. How
would you assess his leadership ability now?
I've had a fascinating relationship with Governor Christie, as a broadcaster. He's out of the box. I found him to be candid, engaging, and interesting. You and I have talked about it for years. I wrote about in the book that he and I have a different view as to how direct and confrontational you could or should be. He told me directly that he thinks that my view is not the accurate one, that you need sometimes to be that direct and confrontational. I believe at times it's unnecessarily so. Time will tell. The jury's still out, if you will, in terms of public opinion. I wish the governor all the best, and I wish that he could step back and learn from some of this, because the state still has serious problems, and he is the governor of the state, and he needs to bring people together.
Let me just close with this. What is the most important piece of advice that you have for anyone aspiring to leadership?
Take a hard look at yourself. Ask those closest around you what your greatest strengths are. But here's the second question. Tell me one area where I need to improve to become better. and don't argue with them when they tell you. I've done this with my own people in public broadcasting and the company that I run, our production company, and the work that I've done as a trainer and coach in the field. And I'll tell you what, when I hear things that I'd rather not hear because you do want everyone patting you on the back, it's the hardest thing I've ever done is to take that feedback and not argue. Because all feedback is a gift, even when you disagree with it. You can only grow from taking it in and learning from it. It's the hardest thing a leader can ever do, but it's one of the most valuable.
All right, Steve, thank you so much. The book is Lessons in Leadership, and you can learn a little bit about leadership reading it. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Raf.